To the third in a series of 3 webinars on family literacy, put on for the recipients of the LiNK grant, the Literacy in Kansas grant by Greenbush. And my name is Jane Groff, and I'm the director of the Kansas Parent Information Resource Center, KPIRC. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But today I want us to look at this first screen. And the topic for today is sharing family-friendly literacy data. It's not just sharing literacy data, but it's sharing family-friendly literacy data. And a subtitle to that is Demystifying Data for Families. So data can be helpful to families if it is demystified and made family friendly. And the reason that photo is on there, or that picture is on there, because if that is a parent that is being shared some data, and if it is not family friendly, or if it is very mysterious, he will not know where the target is or how to help their child progress in reading or in literacy unless we share family-friendly data with him. So that is the purpose. We want families to be able to hit the target of supporting their children's learning, especially in literacy. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. You can go forward. So as I mentioned, I'm the executive director of the Kansas Parent Information Resource Center, and you can see that we are a member of TASN, the Technical Assistance Systems Network. And TASN is part of KSDE. It is their technical assistance branch, or their arm. KPIRC's emphasis is on family engagement, and we train educators across the state, and families also, but mostly educators across the state, in best practices, research, etc., in this area of family engagement. Thanks, Jennifer. So the objectives for this webinar, which is the final webinar for this series anyway, is that at the end of the webinar, you'll be able to identify 2 types of data. I say data, some say data, whatever works for you. You can identify 2 strategies to share data with families. You will be able to identify 2 types of high-impact family engagement strategies. You'll be able to explain 2 points about a growth mindset. And you'll be able to explain how a peanut butter sandwich is like a parent-teacher conference. Thanks, Jennifer. So, in my mind, this moment in time is an opportunity for all of you that received the Literacy in Kansas grant, the LiNK grant, to be able to share data with families around literacy in a way that you have never done before. And we want to seize this opportunity. Thanks, Jennifer. So this webinar is about sharing student data with families, some of the why about that, the what about that, the how about that. And we're going to talk about all those pertinent questions around why should we share student data with families. Thanks, Jennifer. I like this slide because it's one short, quick sentence about why we should share data with families. Because informed and engaged parents have a better chance of helping their kids at home. If parents are informed and engaged, they can support their child's learning at home. And if we give them a generic target, then they're not sure where to aim. But if we get specific, and that can begin with sharing data, then parents or families know where to aim and know how to support their children's learning at home. Thanks, Jennifer. So let's look at other reasons that we're going to share data to engage families. The first bullet says that data is useful to engage families and communities in improving individual student progress. So data can promote progress, and that's what we want. The second bullet is data helps families to understand how their children are performing and where it exists in student achievement. I can't quite see the side of the statement there because of a frame. But so data helps families understand how their children are performing. And that's what we want. And where they're at in their achievement. And the third bullet says data can be used to guide parents and families to take appropriate actions to support the academic success of their individual child. So data has lots of purposes, but the main purpose is so that families can support their child's learning at home, that they have a target to hit and they know where they're aiming. Thanks, Jennifer. So I want you to look at this slide because it shows a range of the impact of family engagement strategies. And you can see that there are some lower impact strategies and some higher impact strategies. And if you look, you will see a light blue egg that is on the right-hand side over toward the higher impact strategies. And I'm going to give you just, 10, 15 seconds here to look at this whole diagram, but to really look at the boxes that are in the light blue egg. So there are really three things that I want you to notice about the strategies, the high impact strategies that are in that egg. In general, those strategies are initiated by the teacher. We don't wait on the family, but they're initiated by the teacher. The second important thing is that those strategies can pretty much happen at home. They do not have to happen in the school building. They can happen at home. And we want that. We want families to be able to do these high impact strategies at home. And the third thing I want you to see is that several of them offer the opportunity to share data with families. So you can see the box that says weekly data sharing folders. Of course, that's data that's going home every week, sometimes Friday afternoons. Home visits, you can share data on home visits. I really like modeling learning support strategies. Sometimes those happen on a literacy night, family literacy night, and teachers model strategies that families can go home and do. The other thing is you can see the goal setting talks up at the top of the egg. When we set goals with students and they're talked about, families know where they're headed and they know how to support. So I just wanted this slide to show you that there are low impact and high impact strategies for sharing data. Now that doesn't mean that on the left-hand side, those low impact strategies have to stay there. They can also become high impact strategies. For example, if we're going to do a celebration or a potluck on the left-hand side, we can redesign those events to share data with families. Then they move over to the right. We can celebrate that data. We can have a potluck and share class data, and they can move over to higher impact when we're doing a best practice like sharing data. So thanks, Jennifer. So what is data really, though? What is it? We get all this data as educators, but data really represents a student. And we always want to remember that. We want to keep data as a student. And then the piece that we don't want to leave off is that a student is part of a family. And hopefully a supportive family, a family that wants to support their student, their child. So when we talk about data in this webinar, in any situation, let's remember data is a student. Student first, part of a family. Thanks, Jennifer. So let's talk about types of data. What can it look like? It can be combined sets of information. It might be about their students' achievements, their strengths, their challenges, their areas of interest, and their learning styles. And sometimes we don't think about data in that manner. We think about it more formally, but informal data can be their strengths and challenges, what areas they're interested in, their learning style. And the second bullet talks a little bit more about formal data. We're used to thinking of it as grades and test scores, but it can also include students' preparedness, problem-solving ability, critical thinking skills, skills like that. So there's a couple of different types of data, informal, formal. There's also quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative tends to be numbers. Qualitative tends to be descriptive words. So I also want to look at the photo down at the bottom because I think it has a good lesson in it as this student is writing down her data. She's owning her data. But data is not the destination. It is part of the journey. So her writing down that number of 88 or 90% or whatever, it's her destination. It's a journey to where she's going to get to a goal that she has. So we want to see data as part of the journey. Thanks, Jennifer. And the one thing that I think would be very beneficial for parents to understand, and a workshop could really be done on this topic alone, is the fixed and growth mindsets. And you can see down at the bottom, you can get this handout, this resource at the website down at the bottom at Doing What Works. But I want to talk about it just for a minute because on the left-hand side, we have a fixed mindset. And on the right-hand side, we have a growth mindset. On the fixed mindset, it says intelligence is static. It's just sort of frozen in time, set in time. But on a growth mindset, intelligence can be developed. And we want families to understand this growth mindset because most of us have grown up and learned with the fixed mindset in mind. So in the fixed mindset, that leads to a desire to look smart, and therefore we have a tendency to avoid a challenge, give up easily, see efforts as fruitless or worse, or ignore useful negative feedback and feel threatened by the success of others. And as a result of that, students may plateau early and achieve less than their full potential, that fixed mindset. But when we look over at the growth mindset, that leads to a desire to learn and therefore a tendency to embrace challenges, persist in the face of a setback, see efforts as the path to mastery, learn from criticism, and find lessons and inspiration in the success of others. And as a result, they reach even higher. So I think as part of a literacy workshop or part of data sharing, or in a standalone workshop with families, it would be very beneficial to go over this two mindset approach. Introduce them to a growth mindset and compare and contrast the differences. I think that would benefit any parent. And then as you go further into sharing data, you can tie in the growth mindset. Thanks, Jennifer. So this is a video that I would like for you to watch in its entirety. I think it's about 5 minutes. And it is a good example of a school and how they share data with families. And the reason I want you to see it is because, not to say you have to do it this way, but to cause you to think about how at your school you may already share data or how you might change it up. So thanks, Jennifer. You can start it. I don't hear the sound, Jennifer, but I see the video.
At our school.
How about now?
I think it's super,
yes.
Because once you have everybody working together, you have the teachers, you have the interventionists, you have the aides, and now you've got the parents on board. You can't have anything but success. In the last 5 years, we started really sending home data with explanations. When I send the data home, then parents will start calling. I leave my first half hour of the day free so that if I have phone calls or if they are dropping their kids off and have a question, they can come down here. They know I'm open. We have a parent data night at the beginning of every school year. We try to have it after work hours, and I get up on the overhead and I explain what the data is, what it looks like, what we do, what we're looking for, and what they can do at home to help. I make a folder on every single student that I see. It shows every single test that we did, every single indicator that we did, and where they fell in each individual test. It also gives them a cheat sheet on the acronyms, because teachers have a tendency to talk in acronyms and talk in teacherese. So if it says oral reading fluency, I give them a cheat sheet that says that is how many words do you read a minute. They do get a standard report card too. But sometimes it's like, I got a B in reading. What does that mean? My kid can read. So when Tony came in August, this is an average C student in the green. This is a below average student in the yellow, and this is well below average in the red. If he follows this path, which is what we're expecting him to do, then he will be an average student in second grade by May. The first test that we gave him is the nonsense words fluency correct letter sounds. These are your nonsense words. Now they look kind of odd for adults, but if you think of them as like syllables, like re is a nonsense word, peat is a nonsense word, but together they're a word, repeat. So at the beginning of the year when we tested him, he read 31 sounds. But now that we've been working with him for 6 weeks, he's up to 70 sounds. And if you're going to work with him at home, really encourage him to read them as whole words, because 9 out of 10 parents say, what can I do to help? And if you just say read with them, well, read what? Getting down to specific skill gives the parents some empowerment to do something about getting that grade better.
I think definitely it's made me more engaged. I know what to work on with Braden, so I pay attention more. We've practiced a lot with reading.
She helps me read a lot. It helps me get the harder books and harder chapters. Go.
Everyone wants their kids to do well, so they want to know exactly where they are and how we're going to get better.
Jose was way behind. It started in kindergarten all the way through second grade. He was below grade level, and he started at Humboldt his third grade year.
He was well below average. But he has no confidence, and he said, I can't read and I don't read. His parents were kind of defeated because he'd been getting bad grades where he was. And Mom got a data report.
She handed me the folder, and I opened it up, and I was just in awe and shock and tears because I could see right away the growth on the chart where he was way down and he was way high now.
He ended up staying in Title I because he had a tendency to go up and down, but to see that he was making progress, it motivated him, it motivated her.
School year, she pressed her left hand to her cheek and smiled.
I could see the progress and I could see his achievements, and I felt like what I was doing at home was helping with what they were doing at school.
I read a lot. I read about bats. I read about animals. I learn lots of things, and my grades go higher and higher.
He went from not wanting to read to, look, Mom, I got a chapter book, and this book's about the, can I read this to you? And I'm like, of course. I believe if you have communication between teachers, parents, staff, the parents feel comfortable, kids feel comfortable, and I think it's valuable that they communicate with you because then you know where your child's at.
The fact that we all work together as one big group, I think a lot of our success is part of that. And the success that we've had as a school tells us that we're doing the right thing.
Thank you, Jennifer. So one of the things, first of all, I apologize for a little bit of that delay on some of the video when they were speaking. But let's review what was happening inside Humble, what's going on in this school that enabled them to demystify some of their data for families. The first thing they said they wanted to do was they wanted to share student progress more often. So we might do it during report card time, we might, or parent-teacher conferences, but we have way more data than that. And they wanted to share student progress more often. And they wanted to let families in on the data that teachers were seeing. So teachers see data and lots of data, but they wanted families to be informed. So one of the first things they did was, she said they held a parent data night, and they explained to parents some of the acronyms, what tests or assessments were given at this parent data night. And then she said they also created an individual student folder for each student. Thanks, Jennifer. So in the data folders that they created at this particular school, they would break each test out into its own chart or graph. So like she said, we showed them all the data at one point, but they would break down each test into its own chart or graph. So they're not looking at too many on a page or feeling overwhelmed. They also include students' homemade charts. So if a student was coloring in a chart, they would include that in the folder. I really like this tip about printing in color. It may be a little more expensive, but wow, what a difference it makes for a parent to be able to see the different levels when they're in color. They created a cheat sheet on acronyms because as educators, we use them with one another, and sometimes we forget and use them with families. And so we need to be sure they know what we are saying and try to avoid acronyms if we can. We need to write out, spell out the assessment title. I was reading a document the other day and I saw F&P on it, and that was an assessment title, and I did not know what that was. And I had to ask, and it was a Fontes and Pinnell. That's what the F&P stood for. But we want to spell out those assessments. We want to explain what the assessment is assessing. What is it? What are we using it for with their student? And then we need to include a handout or a resource of tips and tools that will allow parents to practice the skill at home. Those can all be used in the data folder. Thanks, Jennifer. So now let's just take a moment or two, a little bit of time, and talk about sharing data using technology. Since we have so many different opportunities, different types of technology, and we'll just look at a few examples that I've seen or that I know about. Thanks, Jennifer. I was talking with a brand new teacher in Junction City, Kansas, and she came up with this idea just on her own. It's probably, she's been doing this for a couple of years, but she was a special education teacher, and she wanted to get data to families, and so she just used email. That was her first way to reach out to families. And I'm going to read this just so that we're together, and in case anybody's ever on a phone and wants to hear this over the phone line. So this teacher wrote about Mercedes, a 5th grade student. Dear parents, as you know, one of Mercedes' academic goals is to increase her accuracy when reading sight words. Included is a graph that Mercedes has created in order to track her progress. She has definitely made progress since we began the school year. So they celebrated in that first paragraph. Then she wrote, sight word accuracy is an important skill for students and leads to success in reading. The current benchmark for a 5th grade student at the beginning of the school year is 50% on the 5th grade sight word list. Mercedes is currently 78% accurate on the 4th grade sight word list. So she gave her some data. She gave some explanation of sight word accuracy in the second paragraph. Then finally, I have also included an example of the word list that Mercedes currently learning. In order to improve this skill even more, I'd encourage you to have Mercedes practice these words at home. It would also be extremely beneficial to have Mercedes read aloud to an adult for 15 to 20 minutes every evening. So in the final paragraph, she encourages them to read together and to practice together at home. And please let me know if you have any questions. So Jennifer, if you'll go forward. We can see the chart that Mercedes created on her own. And we can see at the top, she says, learn 4th grade sight words, and maybe her goal is 90%. And we can see dates at the bottom and percentages on the left-hand side. And how Mercedes colors in her chart regularly to show growth. And so the parents got this, and this was an attachment in the email. And click again, Jennifer. And then, as promised, she said, would you please practice sight words with Mercedes at home? So she attached those sight words for the family so they knew what sight words to practice at home. Thanks, Jennifer. And then finally, this was a goal sheet this teacher used with her students. And sometimes they would set goals with the family, and you could see it's just my goal number 1 is, this goal is important because, and what I'll do to reach this goal. And they normally would set a couple different goals. One might be for reading, one might be for math. And any of these charts you'll be able to have or see as you can contact me at the end. There'll be my email, or as you go through the webinar again, you can see how it was constructed and maybe make your own. So thanks, Jennifer. So the last one was a teacher in Junction City. This is a teacher in Kansas City, Kansas. And this was a sharing data and activity night for kindergarten. This is a look at a whole class, how a whole class is doing. At the bottom are student numbers, so that they are very anonymous. There's no names, but every student is assigned a number, and the parent is given the number of their student. And along the left-hand side was letters correct. So in this particular kindergarten class, this particular sharing data activity night, it was helping parents find out, look at the whole class, how the whole class is doing. And you can see the ups and the downs of where this data is at. Then the parent could individually find their student number at the bottom, find where their student is at, and if I remember right, the blue line might be the level they want their students to get to, and where the state level is at. And I think the darker line is where they wanted their class to get, way up at the top, even reach higher. So I think it really benefits a parent to look at how the whole class is doing, so they can see that. They can see where their student places in reference to a whole class. Thanks, Jennifer. Then this was a student data folder, and you can see where this student identifying letters, where there was 14 out of the 26, and parents can easily tell from this particular worksheet what letters they may need to work on at home. Thanks, Jennifer. There was also games that night, and then make and takes for the families to take home. So you can see on the left, Cheerios and marshmallows are so fun. And they could make letters out of the Cheerios and marshmallows. And if you look further down that table, you can see them playing with, I'm not sure if it's shaving cream or Cool Whip. It looks a little bit more like shaving cream. But, and I'm sure they were writing letters and maybe words in that shaving cream. And then on the right, there was a game where the parent could call out the letter, and the student would go search and find that letter and stand beside it or on it. So a lot of interaction between families and their students around literacy. Thanks, Jennifer. So this is at the same school on a recent first and second grade data night. And again, they made a whole class chart that is very large, and it's placed outside of the gym. And for the first and second grade data night, they were looking at reading levels on the left-hand side. And the student number, again, is down at the bottom. So as the principal welcomed the families into the school, the first thing they ran into was this huge chart with two teachers there explaining what this chart was all about, the reading levels and giving the families their individual student number. But if you look at the top, you can see the orange was quarter one reading level. The gray was an October goal. The gold was a December goal, blue is a March goal, and green is a May goal. So if we look at student number 4, we can see that reading at a grade level, this student is reading at the second grade level. And by October, they wanted them up. You can see at the gray level. And by December at the yellow level, so they can see there is room for growth, and particularly working with their children at home. So you can also look at, let's just say, student number 28. Student number 28 was at the second grade level, and then very much shot up. Very, very high there. Maybe that's student 27. Yeah, that's student 27. 28 is at the second grade level. Student 27 is well above the May goal. Well above the May goal. So you can see the ups and the downs looking at the class chart, but then you can, as a parent, find your individual student, see where they're at and where they need to go. Thanks, Jennifer. So this particular data night was tweeted about, and the teachers at Emerson Elementary tweeted it, and they said, we had fun sharing data and ways to improve literacy at home with our first and second grade families last night. We discussed Fontes and Pinnell growth, comprehension strategies, and even had some hot cocoa. So a great way to use technology was they tweeted about their data night. And some of the things I told you that they did is over on the right-hand side. I mentioned the first couple of 2-3 things. The principal welcomed them. The data was outside the door. They were given their grade level data. Then they walked into the gym and there was a book walk. So pages of some books were copied and put up on the wall. And by families with their student, the student would go from chart paper to chart paper and read to their parents the particular pages that were on the chart paper. And then they also carried clipboards with them, and they would focus on some comprehension questions, and the second graders would write out the answers to those questions. So they did some reading with their families out loud as they did the book walk. Then they went to a reading make and take. And the first graders were having trouble with long vowel sounds. So they worked on an activity, a make and take, so they could practice long vowel sounds. And the second grade needed focus on comprehension strategies. So their make and take was on that. And then they had some hot cocoa and they had some tortillas with butter, because hot cocoa was in the Pete the Cat Snow Days book, and the tortillas was in Big Moon Tortilla, that book. And so they focused on those two books, and then they sat and had hot cocoa and tortillas, and the parents visited, and the kids played some more games. And so it was just a wonderful thing to tweet about. So I'd encourage you to tweet if you do a data night or a family literacy night. Thanks, Jennifer. Some of you that are implementing MTSS, you are doing progress monitoring regularly. So this is an example of a progress monitoring graph that could be shared with families. And at the bottom, you have your weekly dates of when you do the progress monitoring with your students. And on the left, in this particular one, we have the words read that are correct. So at the bottom of this chart, you can see the green dots, and those are the errors, the number of errors that were happening each week when the student is being monitored. The red dots are those that the student was getting correct. So you can see they started out and then they took a little dip. And then those red dots started to go up. And if you look, you can see a vertical line that goes up and down. And at the very top of that vertical line, it says Intervention 1. So in your MTSS, there's an intervention that was put into place. And you can see, you can point out to the parent that when that intervention is put in place, you can see that that student started to get more correct. They dip down a little bit in November. You can see there's a little dip, and then they go back up, and they're getting more and more correct. So you can show a parent how an intervention affects a student, how it supported them or not, and how you may change that intervention. So I think a progress monitoring graph, if the terms are explained and the aim lines are explained, can show a parent very well how you're implementing interventions and how it is working for their child. Thanks, Jennifer. So the time that we normally share student data with families typically is at parent-teacher conferences or on quarterly report cards. Nearly 9 in 10 parents, including 3 of 4 impoverished parents, attend your general parent-teacher conferences every year. For poor parents or racial minorities and those with low education levels, general parent-teacher conferences dominate their school involvement methods by an even bigger margins. So for families at high risk or in need, parent-teacher conferences are the typical way that they will involve or engage with the school. Thanks, Jennifer. So there is a challenge with that. The challenge is that these data sharing opportunities don't happen often enough, not frequent enough to promote a regular ongoing communication between school and family, and they don't share information then because they're not often enough. The parent-teacher model hasn't changed much in the decades that it's been in use. We still, in general, kind of do typical parent-teacher conferences. And finally, conferences are short. The info a parent receives is hard to interpret, and it's unclear what actions the parent or the teacher should take. They don't know what to do to maximize the student's strengths. So a couple of challenges. We're doing the parent-teacher conferences the same way, and we may not be sharing any data with families. So there's a challenge to that. We need to share data with families, and we need to do it more often. So we need to figure out a way or an option to do that. Thanks, Jennifer. So we need to reimagine or rethink parent-teacher conferences. We need to think, okay, we may think we're doing our parent-teacher conferences the typical way, but we need to change it up. We need to share data somehow, some way. And with the creativity that I've seen many teachers have, it can happen. We just need to take the time to think about it and reimagine it. Thanks, Jennifer. And this is a video that I'd like for you to watch just for 5 minutes. And Jennifer, if you would stop it at 5 minutes, I'd appreciate that. And I want you to, again, watch this video to think, not that you're going to do it this very same way, but to think how you might change your sharing of data at your school. Thanks, Jennifer.
Decided to do APTT meetings because I felt like it was a different approach to parent-teacher conferences. In the past, my conferences have literally been 5 or 10 minutes, and I kind of felt like it was a waste of parents' time the way that I was doing my meetings in the past. So they would come in, if I needed to address a behavior issue or academic concerns, then the meetings would be longer. But for my students that were high, it was kind of like, okay, they're on target. Thank you for coming. You know, you can go. So I really saw this as an opportunity to just show parents how their students compare to the entire class, and just also give them tools and activities that they can do to help, even if their students are on track, they can do these activities to help them stay on track.
I came to this meeting also because I wanted to see at what level midway through the school that Jordan is at. What I have learned from my son Jurius is that kindergarten and first grade are the critical years of a child's life for development. And with school almost halfway over, I wanted to know, how was she at 50%, 60%, or what level in reading that she's at, or math, and where do I need to go from there?
Thank you all for coming. As you know, this is our 3rd APTT meeting, and I really appreciate those of you who came in September and November. I think it has made such a difference in your child's progress, the way that you have been involved with them and
working with them at home on our most important reading and math goals. So we'll continue to talk about those goals, how they're progressing, and some more activities that you can do at home with them. But we're going to start off with a little icebreaker. We're going to play Two Truths and a Lie. I don't know if any of you all have ever played it, but before we start, we're going to share your name and go around, share your name and then your child's name so everyone is familiar with each other. We can start here. So why are we here? So we're here to see how your child is doing on our most important reading and math skills goal. Math skills, and those skills are the same that we talked about in our first and second meetings. And we're also here to share what you've been doing at home to help your child reach those goals. As you can tell, your child is learning a lot of new things, and some of those things have been due to you. You're the most important partner with school to help your child grow. We're also here to identify some more activities that you can help your child do at home to reach those goals. So we've already, I've already sent home some activities that you can do, but we're going to learn about some more activities today. And we're also here to set a new goal for your child's progress in May and to commit actions to those goals. So we're going to talk about what things are you going to do at home to help make sure that your child is still on the path to reaching those goals. From anyone who was at the meeting in September and November, do you remember our most important reading skill? Yes, sight words, of course. Sight words are so important. So can someone give me an example of a sight word? See. See. You. We. So all of those, yes, like you said, are sight words. Anything that you read in a magazine, in a newspaper, in a book, they're going to have sight words. And sight words are words that can't be sounded out. So instead of teaching students to, sound out each part of the word like you would do a word like cat, these words are just words that students need to be able to see and be able to just read immediately. So these types of words, we do a drill and practice and different activities to help them learn the words. So we're just going to go around and share some of the activities that you've been doing at home to help your child learn these sight words.
Well, I make flashcards, and sometimes when I think they're slipping out, how do you spell so-and-so, how do you spell that word?
Mm-hmm.
And then I might use it in a sentence if they're not understanding what I'm saying.
Okay, so how we're doing on our goal. So everyone take out this graph here. So at the bottom of the graph is the student, your child's number. The number is also found on the right pocket of their folder, but it's also highlighted or circled as well. Before I have you look at your child's information, we're going to practice with my own information. So I'm number 25, if everyone can point to number 25 at the bottom. And then on the left side is a number of sight words. If you're looking at 25 and then go across to the left, how many sight words have I learned? It would be the top of the green. So now I want you to point to your child's number and then go to the top of that.
Thanks, Jennifer. So when they were talking at the beginning of this video, she kept saying APTT. That is an academic parent teacher team. That's what she's calling it. That's what they called their group. So that you can watch that whole video if you'd like. It's out on YouTube. Or you can watch this webinar again and watch the whole video. But anyway, that causes us to think about, she didn't feel like her parent-teacher conferences were very productive, and so she wanted something different. So she had what she called her academic parent-teacher team nights, where they would come in, share data, and on this one you saw them working on sight words, and they practice with one another, they look at data, etc. So if you would like, I'd like you to look at this picture, and it says, find out why a parent-teacher conference should be like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And if you would like to type in the chat box why you think or how you think a parent-teacher conference should be like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That might be interesting to look at. You might spend a couple seconds thinking about it. When I think about it initially, I think about the parent being a piece of bread, the teacher being the piece of bread, and the student, of course, is what they come together on. And then if you really want to describe the peanut butter and jelly being mixed together, it is all the complex parts of a student. It might, all the different kinds of data possibly that is all together that makes up this student. That's my thinking on it, but you may have some other ideas. So that we want to look at that. The one thing about data is that educators are becoming more proactive in communicating with families, which is awesome. And they want to share information in between these report cards. We know report cards and conferences, there's too much time in between, especially for students that may be struggling or having interventions. And parents are asking more questions about the data that they see in progress notes. They want to understand what it means. And parents then want information or guidance about how to act on that data. And so we want to be able to explain it in a family-friendly manner and help them know how to act on data. Thanks, Jennifer. If you go to our website, the Kansas Parent Information, the KPERC website, it's on the screen, you will see this data resource, sharing data resource. This is a really good resource because it isn't just for administrators or teachers or families, it covers all of them. And so there is a page for administrators, for teachers, and dedicated to and families, to each one on how to share data effectively with them, and for families to know what kind of questions to ask about data. So if you'd like that resource, just go to our website and you put in tips for administrators, teachers, and families, and it'll pop up. Thanks, Jennifer. So we're wrapping up, and the objectives that we talked about at the beginning, we said we'd be able to identify 2 types of data. We talked about informal and formal, maybe problem-solving skills for a student, and maybe test. We talked about identifying 2 strategies to share data with families. We can do that through a data night. We can do it through technology. We saw some Twitter, some email. We talked about identifying 2 types of high-impact family engagement strategies. That, again, could be a data night, or it could be a grade level data night, whole school data night, individual sharing data. We talked about 2 points about that growth mindset, that students with a growth mindset don't see challenges as something to set them back or make them afraid, but they know that it helps them grow and progress, and that they also are more eager than to take on challenges with a growth mindset. And you can think about your peanut butter sandwich, how it's like a parent-teacher conference, in any way that you would like, and I'll bet you're going to be correct. So thanks for thinking about that, though. Okay, thanks, Jennifer. So, as you've heard this webinar about sharing data and making it family-friendly and demystifying data, it'd be great to come together as a school staff and talk about where you already share data, if you do, and if you don't, where you may begin to share data. And if you already do, you want to examine if it's been family-friendly, if it's simple charts, if you're not using acronyms, all the best strategies that we talked about earlier. So I wish you the best on your next steps. And if you have any questions, you can always go to my email on this screen. My email is there again, as well as the KPERC website. So thank you very much for joining us on this third webinar on sharing data with families. I hope you found it beneficial, and thank you for weathering some of the technological problems at the beginning, but we got it done, and the information is there for you to review at any time you so choose. Thank you again. Bye-bye.